We're back.
We're back.
It is so good to always sit down for a war stories, Tony. It is, as I've said many times, it's probably the most favorite thing I do on YouTube at this point.
I'm glad to hear that. It's kind of the way I look at this is it's everything else I do on YouTube. You know, I'm creating content for the channel.
Yeah.
This is that little bit that I just do for me.
Yeah.
And if we only had 5 people watching, I just enjoy once every 2 weeks sitting down with my friend to discuss films. And you picked a great one tonight. I hadn't seen this since.
Well, you
I
picked
was probably like, pardon?
You picked it.
Oh, did I?
You remember you read my mind. End of Kajaki, and because you knew what I was about to say. So technically speaking, you kind of channeled. Yeah. So yeah. Well,
I don't think I've seen this film since I was about 9, and I sat down the other day, and I did watch it in 2 sittings because just life gets in the way. So I watched like the first hour and a bit one night, and then the rest of it the following night. Man, they don't make them like this anymore.
They don't. And this film is so influential, and yet by today's, I just say by today's, meaning we're so far out from it now that so many people I find have never seen it and don't realize how it has informed the films they love. Because filmmakers still know and love this movie. Like this movie is to action movies what Lawrence of Arabia is to dramatic epics. Like it, and Lawrence of Arabia is also a war film. So, I'll ride right past that for now. So the point is that like this film has inspired so much in modern action and adventure films. It's not even funny. Like it's the level of ambition that they have in this movie. When was the first time you saw it?
I'm pretty sure it was a film I would have sat down and either watched with my dad or my grand. I actually think it was my granddad. On my mum's side, he was like, have you seen this before? And I can remember. I remember him sort of being very, sit down and watch this, and even so for me, it would have been around the mid 80s. When did this film come out?
68.
Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was like early 70s.
Yeah, it's
because it seems so advanced for the time.
Yeah, it's ahead of its time. Yeah.
It's there's so much going on, from the performances, the writing, the script. Talk about a way to build tension, suspense, and the star power in this film.
Oh,
movie stars like Burton and Eastwood. And even beyond them, like the female actresses in this, movie stars like Burton and Eastwood just don't exist anymore.
No.
And we were chatting in a private message, I think yesterday, and I said to you, there's an early scene in the barn and then a scene later on where they're in the bar, which is when I was kind of watching the first half, where it's literally just Burton and Eastwood at a table talking to each other.
Yep.
And that is it's so captivating because, the star power and, the way Burton delivers his lines, the way, Eastwood's being Eastwood, in a way, Burton's being Burton. But damn, who doesn't want to watch that on screen? I'm just sitting there watching these 2 giants of cinema just chew the scenery in a very understated way as well.
Yeah.
It's not like a shouty Al Pacino performance.
No, they're serving the story. They're in the service of the script the whole time, which was based on the Alistair MacLean novel. So we could argue that Alistair MacLean may have written the greatest fictional World War II adventure story of all time, or action story, however you want to define that genre. But yeah, Eastwood and Burton. And Burton especially is otherwise in throughout his career. Burton was an acquired taste for a lot of people in his other projects. And yet I find that I've watched a lot of Burton stuff, Night of the Iguana and all that kind of stuff. And I love it when Burton's on point. A lot of the stuff he did with Elizabeth Taylor, I can take it or leave it. But when he was, you know, kind of out there on his own, he did some great stuff. And I find that even for people that don't like watching Burton, they still love this movie and watch it. This is like their outlier for I don't have a problem with Burton myself, but a lot of people aren't interested in the other types of movies he did, but they will watch this one. And so in that respect, I sometimes feel like this is very against Burton's normal pattern as well in his career. Like, he did military stuff and war type stuff. Like, he did The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That's a black coffee kind of film. Like, that's an acquired taste. That's a film where you kind of have to either be digging it or not, like the Ipcris File. But in the case of this movie, this is a crowd pleaser from beginning to end, but smart. It's not, it doesn't.
Yeah, very smart.
Yeah, it doesn't dumb down. I'm over talking it. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
What I really find is a shame is when, if you say to someone, Clint Eastwood, World War II, 99.9% of people don't go Where Eagles Dare. They go, Kelly's Heroes, greatest war movie ever made. And they're actually, I've seen a load of those people on Facebook today, who are saying Obi-Wan 9 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. I'm like, really? I didn't think. I'm not going to get into the whole Obi-Wan thing. I wanted to hate it more than I did, to be honest. But yeah, but it's not a 9 out of 10 anyway. I digress.
Yeah, well, for anybody, I see a lot of people in the chat. First, I wanted to acknowledge Jody had a super chat. He says, "Just cause." Thank you, Jody.
Thanks, Jody.
I wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of positive chatter right now in the chat. A lot of people are here who love this movie. If you guys really like this movie, those of you in the chat, I want to show you something real quick. I wanted to feature this more in today's episode of War Stories, but I didn't have time to really comb through it and pull out some of the nuggets of wisdom and trivia that are in here. But if you love Where Eagles Dare, Cinema Retro has done a special edition magazine issue of their magazine. It's completely devoted, completely a 100% content devotion to Where Eagles Dare, and filled with all kinds of rare photography, interviews, archival interviews, information about the production. It is, if you love this movie, you have to have this. And it's not a sold out thing. They actually reissued it with an expanded. This is the reissue of this edition, and I think they now sell it almost permanently. So yeah, it's an amazing companion piece to anybody who loves this film. Yeah. Speaking of, now we got to get into the film.
Yes.
So, well, all right. Where do we begin? You know what I think? I think we should begin with this movie literally from the opening notes, because this film, I saw this film for the first time in college, despite the fact that I watched The Great Escape and The Longest Day and a bunch of other war films growing up. Things just get past you. You know, you don't see everything. And so I finally saw it in college, and I will never forget thinking to myself, because there are late 60s war movies that I really love, and there are ones where I kind of go, at least they tried, you know, like, so ones I love are like, when I say 60s war films, The Great Escape. Ones I go, well, at least they tried, or things like Battle of the Bulge. There's like this kind of, it's like, it's not a disaster, but it's not one you're going to like watch every year, you know? So the opening notes of this movie haunted me in a positive way the rest of my life. It's one of the best scores I've ever heard. So here is the literal opening notes of the film. I couldn't play too much because obviously the copyright gods would get us. But that score it starts. It's like the Alpine mountains at night, and you just hear the tapping of drums, the military drums, very faintly, and they start to grow, and then that deep haunting brass comes into it, while that 1930s German font is showing all the credits. I don't know, Tony, if there's anything more immediately immersive for the World War II flavor than the opening of Where Eagles Dare. I don't think any other movie has achieved that. I honestly don't. It may be that this movie may be why every winter is when I start delving back into World War II history. Every winter it happens. Ask Melinda.
Yeah. Okay.
Every winter. It's like when salmon start swimming upstream.
It is there's some wonderful choices made with that piece of music. The fact that all the instruments, would have been in a military band. It's a great pick, but that whole opening scene, I think our show War Stories is about the entire genre of war films couched in real world conflicts. We're not going to do Starship Troopers, for example,
right?
But then within the war film genre, you have subgenres, and I believe this is the best men on a mission World War II movie. And that music really, you kind of already know before, if you know nothing about this film and you sit down and watch it, you start hearing that music and then the plane flying over the Alps. This is a men on a mission movie. This is, Army intelligence, OSS, whatever it is. It's that kind of film.
There are so many films that learned the lessons that this movie taught us to make their own great films. And there's so many films that didn't learn this lesson. So I've said many times, as much as I love what works in Captain America: First Avenger, they should have watched this movie a lot closer to construct their third act, because they missed the mark big time. And for that third act. And then similarly, there was another film that was just in my head and it's just gone away and I can't think of what it was. Anyway, so we get this musical intro. We now have a Junkers flying through the sky at night, and you've got paratroops in German winter gear on this plane, and then it cuts to the parachute light that's red. It's still like, blinking red, and it dissolves back in time. It doesn't tell you that, but film language being what it is, we go back to the British briefing for the mission. I'd like to give a notable shout out at this point to the excellent battle dress uniforms that are in this scene. Just want to point that out. I covet them. And we start to have that classic setup, much like with Guns of Navarone, which was also an Alistair MacLean novel first. This whole idea of it, like you said, it's soldiers on a mission, men on a mission, whatever you want to call it. I know that there's some people who say that these briefing scenes have become cliche, but in point of fact, I don't feel like they do them enough anymore. And I don't think they make films that earn them. Truthfully, I think the last film that earned this kind of scene but subverted it a little bit, and I mean that in a good way, not in a Rian Johnson way, was Ronin, the Robert De Niro film, where they're trying to be briefed, but Sean Bean is like twitchy. Anyway, but we're talking about Where Eagles Dare. See, that's the thing, guys. Where Eagles Dare inspires so much conversation about other films. Anyway. So here we are in the briefing. Here's the beginning of the briefing.
Here he is, the Castle of the Eagles. And believe me, it's well named, because only an eagle can get to it. Our job is to get inside there and get him out as soon as possible, before they have a chance to get the information from him. The Schloss Adler is inaccessible and impregnable. It would require a battalion of paratroops to take it.
We are hearing this briefing of a mission to go into a deep part of the German mountains, and there's this castle there that the Germans have fortified. And unfortunately, an American general has been shot down while trying to rendezvous with a Russian contingent for a discussion about what will eventually be Operation Overlord, D-Day. They need to get him out before he is coerced or tortured into giving up any information. I do like the mention in one of these moments that I couldn't grab where they ask how this American general got captured. And one of the COs says the Mosquito that he was flying in was hit by I don't remember if they said he was jumped by German fighters or something like that. But I was like, wow, that is unfortunate. Mosquitoes were really fast. So
yeah.
I can imagine.
And this scene as well, the cynical view, which I consider myself to be quite a cynical consumer of cinema. But you could, in one respect, look at this as, it's a dialogue-laden exposition scene. But what it is, in reality, is very, we get the opening shot of the plane, which, by the way, I must say, the camouflage paint job on that plane flying over the Alps, it's just a stunning piece of, it's just such a striking visual. I love it. But yeah, this scene is really, it establishes the rules of the story we're about to go into. Something that they probably should have done in Hurt Locker, but never.
Right.
They never established rules for this stuff. Even just the what does the director call it? The blocking. Where each actor is positioned and things like that. Having Eastwood kind of in the shadows at the back, he's the American there. It was just like, that's a perfect place to put Clint Eastwood. Just sit there and look badass at the moment. So
yeah, he's standing at the back of the room, or I don't remember if I think he's standing. He might be sitting, but he's at the back of the room, just kind of there. And then they address the fact that we have an American from the Rangers here with us for this mission, and his credentials, they should speak for themselves. Which I think is really cool, because if you've done any reading on history, you know that this was around the time that the British were developing the commandos and the Americans were developing their special forces and the Rangers and other things that would evolve into things like the Green Berets, and they would split off and have all these Navy SEALs and all that stuff eventually. So you have this meeting of the minds where you have the best of the British Army, and they are borrowing one of the best of the American forces for this very important mission to get this general out. And this moment here that I've pulled, I love, because one of the guys who's going on the mission, one of the sergeants, he has to ask the question, because they've been saying the whole time, why are we parachuting in with a small force into a heavily fortified German castle when we could do other things? So like there's a suggestion here where the guy says we should just send Lancasters over and drop 10-ton bombs on the castle. And they explain to him why they can't do that.
The captured man, General Carnaby, is an American. If we were to destroy him, then I think General Eisenhower might well launch his second front against us rather than against the Germans.
Like, we're doing this out of courtesy. Like, this is a professional courtesy between two allies. And then we have this part with the sergeant, which I love.
Begging the colonel's pardon, sir. What's all this about? I mean, why is this man so damned important?
General Carnaby is one of the overall coordinators of planning for the second front.
And that's where it comes out, which is we're going in to get this man, not because he's a general, not just because he's American and we're their friends. He is one of the organizers of D-Day. We've got to get him out of there before they can transmit anything. So that's That's the setup, everyone. That's what their mission is. And then it immediately cuts back to the plane, the interior of the plane, and the green light goes and they jump out. It is a beautifully done bit of opening cinema. Like we start with the plane, we zoom in on the light inside after seeing the paratroopers, goes to the briefing from days earlier, comes back to the plane, the light goes green, and the parachutists start going out. And economy of filmmaking. When did people forget how to do this? Like, I don't know how they forgot to do this. All right. They land, and they land in the middle of the night in the snowy mountains of Germany. I assume it's in Germany or Austria, Germany, somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's a mention of Bavaria or something like that. But I spent 6 weeks over the border of the Arctic Circle, learning Arctic warfare. You know, how to survive in the Arctic, how to do telemark skiing, which is not like recreational, go to a ski resort, ski down. The skis are even completely different. When we did quite an amount of training before going on like a 2-week exercise, and we parachuted in. It was one of the lowest parachute jumps I'd ever done. We jumped at like 400 or 500 feet. It was very low, but I remember it being one of the most enjoyable parachute jumps I ever did, because when you land in like 2 or 3 feet of snow, doesn't hurt that much when you hit the ground like it normally does. Yeah. It's well filmed, and even though it is a late 60s production where they're still leaning on this was a thing that they did. If you watch the film, you'll notice that certain close-ups of Richard Burton are done on a process screen. Not all of them, but certain ones. This was a mandate that goes all the way back to the 40s. It's very strange, but I learned about it through reading up on the background of Orson Welles' film The Lady from Shanghai, where it's Rita Hayworth, Orson Welles, and he was the Citizen Kane guy, and he was going to film all this stuff out in, I don't remember if it was the Mediterranean. I think it was the Mediterranean, maybe the Caribbean, Mediterranean, something like that. And he was all on location. And he had these beautiful locations, these beautiful shots. They did everything, all the acting and the scenes out there. And when they got back, the studio said, you have to refilm a certain percentage of these shots for the final movie on a sound stage with a process screen. And he was like, why do I do that?
Why? And they said, well, because we can control the image better. And he's like, but the footage is fine. And they're like, no. He got really annoyed by that. And that's why, for some reason, they had this in old Hollywood. And I'm sure this was one of the last times that was done. And, or it might have been a reshoot, or Burton not being available for a pick, or I should say, after they got done on location, they felt they needed a close up. So they did a process screen. It's one or the other, but it could very well be,
That was my first thought when, because there is one literally just after they parachute in that it is very clearly one of those, and it did, with today's modern cinema eye, as a viewer, it really stands out. And then yes, there is a few more of those shots, particularly when they're in vehicles. There's the rear projection when they're on the motorbike or in the bus later on and things like that. That's all good.
Well, yeah, because that's the only way to do that. Yeah.
But when I saw that first shot of Burton, I kind of made a mental note of it, but I didn't see that many more of them. And my immediate thought was they needed a close up or a pickup shot, and kind of went back. And I was very pleased with. Holy moly!
What the heck? Wow. Thank you, Eric. That's very, very kind. Very, very kind. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the show tonight. And there are some zingers in here that I think you'll be happy with. I'll put it that way. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Eric.
much.
Wow.
Holy
Man,
cow.
where was I? That threw me.
You were talking about the process screenshot that you noticed when he
yeah,
first landed.
and it. I made a mental note of it, and I was like, I can appreciate when this film was made, even though I thought it was early 70s. I can appreciate when it was made. So like, this is not going to annoy me. It was sort of kind of, I wonder how much they do this, and it actually wasn't a lot.
No.
The shots that they do use really do stand out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's not, it's indicative of late 60s filming and technology. But it's not anything that pulls you out of the movie really, because they don't lean into it. It's clearly there just for some necessary inserts and stuff, and then they're out. So we find out that one of the guys who's parachuted down has not regrouped with them, and they go looking for him, and they find him. And it's the guy who you just saw in the other clip asking why the general was so blasted important, the sergeant.
His neck's broken. Damn it.
His neck has been broken. At this point in the film, we suspect it could be from the fall, the parachute drop. But Burton, he tells them, look, I'm going to make sure the radio still works, because this guy had the radio on him, as he came down. You guys go get the rest of the equipment, which came down in these cylinders behind them from the airdrop. We'll all regroup and we'll head to the hunting lodge, the little hunting cabin where they've scoped out they're going to stay. And he inspects the sergeant and realizes the sergeant's neck was broken after he had landed. So he now starts to suspect trouble within the group. And that's the first indication for us as the viewer that all is not well in the mission group, the group that's been picked for the mission. So suspicion starts to arise in the viewer. I remember when I saw that shot of those sequences the first time, and it's not that long into the movie. We might be 10 minutes into the film, 12 minutes, something like that.
At most, yeah. And of a, what is it, like a 2 hour, 15-minute runtime, something like that? Yeah, it's not a short film. So that to have that in the first 10 minutes, and that lingers over the story from this point on.
Yes.
It's where's the next double cross coming from? Who is it? And and a lot of it doesn't come out through the. It doesn't. It's not overdone in the dialogue. It's just very much this. Sense of danger and that just runs throughout the whole film. It's a very, very tense movie, a very, very tense story.
Yeah, I don't have any confirmation of this, but I'd like to think that because the similarities are too stark, I really feel like John Carpenter, when he did his version of The Thing, he took some inspiration from the paranoia within the group in the snow from this movie, because I know that he said he got some of it from Ice Station Zebra, which is also an Alistair MacLean novel.
Yep.
So there's
as his Guns of Navarone,
as his Guns of Navarone, yeah. So there's all this stuff that Alistair MacLean gave us through the film adaptations, which became very popular, that we have to acknowledge. They get to the hunting shack. They have some discussion about, well, won't there be hunters showing up here? And Richard Burton says, no, they're out of season. They won't be here till the spring. We're fine. They're not coming back for a while. And he then says, oh, I'm going to check in with headquarters on the radio. Blast. I forgot the code book in the sergeant's coat when I got the radio. But we saw him get the code book when he took the radio. So he says, I'm going to go back. And one of the other guys says, I can go back for you. And he goes, no, it's my own damn fault. I'll go back. But then this happens. He doesn't go back. He goes into the woodshed next to the hunting cabin. And it's so dark and snowy and the windows are covered in frost that he knows nobody's going to see that he doesn't actually head all the way back.
Jock, save me some coffee.
It'll be cold by then.
And they say that's an advantage. You can't taste cold coffee.
Why couldn't you have supplied some hot water bottles or an electrically heated suit? I thought you loved me.
Can't help what you think. As soon as it's dark, we'll move down into the village of Werfen. In the village, there's a guest house called Zum Wilden Hirsch. I'll meet you there at exactly 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
He goes into the woodshed where he knows Mary is waiting for him. And it's quickly apparent that this was all part of the plan. She indicated that she was in the plane as part of the mission and that she was hiding out of sight from everybody else. They did not know that she was on the plane. She parachuted after them. She's been hiding in the woodshed since. And then he gives her the information about, okay, we're going to head down into the village. You follow after us, but remember not to be seen because it's going to be daylight. We'll all meet up again at this bar, Hofbrau, whatever you want to call it. You are going to go into a adjacent woodshed or garage or something like that that's nearby. I will meet you there at a certain time. I remember when I saw this movie for the first time, when he was giving her all that information, I thought it was really impressive because I'm going, wow, this is actually a really tight plan. And the way they've scripted it, I don't know how to express this, but the way they've scripted it makes you as the viewer confident in the writing. In other words, very early on, they establish these characters are liaisoning with one another for this very important mission, and nothing is really getting by the nothing is really being fudged over as far as the writing goes. Everybody has their place on the chessboard and everybody is playing their part, and meaning mission wise, not just acting wise, but mission wise. I just remember being really impressed by that because a lot of films, especially nowadays, they cut corners with those kind of details. They do the da kind of thing. Like, don't worry about that. Just check your brain at the door and have fun.
Don't overthink it, Michael.
This film, you can overthink it and still have fun with it because it doesn't have those kind of holes. It doesn't have those kind of leaks. There's some things coming up where I'm going to point out some things that aren't necessarily leaks, but they're kind of raised eyebrows kind of things, but it's very minor in the grand scheme of things. It's not about the plot itself is what I mean. Okay. Smith, Richard Burton, his name is Smith. He then returns to the hunting cabin a long while later because he and Mary he and Mary have a roll in the hay. They have a thing going. And I love this moment because Clint Eastwood is still awake and he's checking, he's getting the MP40s ready. He's checking all the weapons. And he's up and a bunch of the other guys have already gone to sleep. And Burton comes in. I'll play it and then we'll talk about it because it's just such a great little exchange.
What kept you?
Well, I was very lucky. I ran into this fabulous blonde. She was lying on a snowdrift.
Do you have a friend?
No, I'm pretty out of luck.
You asked him where he's been. He just, aside from lying in a snowdrift, which is kind of him referencing that she parachuted in as well, he just tells him the truth, which is so ridiculous in the way he says it and the way he's joking, because he makes it sound like he's kidding a little bit. But it's almost easier to make the truth the lie than it is to come up with something else. And it's when I saw that the first time, I was like, oh my God, it's so simple. Because I'm a terrible liar. I'm a terrible liar. So I've always maintained that I can tell the truth all day. I can't tell a lie. So maybe that's why I related to that scene so much, because it was like, if I was somehow talented enough to ascend the ranks of, special service, OSS, or whatever it is, and I was expected to lie, I would always have to find a truth to then make sound like a lie. They have to reconnoiter and case out the joint. They have to see the castle for the first time. This moment occurs.
Somebody's got to be crazy. Just how'd your colonel expect anyone to get in there?
I suppose he feels if he could penetrate the German high command, there's no reason why we should have any difficulty getting up there.
Which is a big bomb drop, because he's now revealed that the colonel that sent us on this mission was also at one time an infiltrator of the German high command. He was a spy. And Clint Eastwood is understandably shocked and says,
Colonel Turner spent the years 40 to 43 in Germany, first in the Wehrmacht and then finally in General Headquarters in Berlin. They say he knew Hitler quite well.
Yeah, well, I thought he looked a little nuts.
I thought he looked a little nuts. I could tell there was something weird about him. Then Smith has his radio check. He finally gets to check in because they couldn't get the radio working in the snowstorm the night before. So he checks in with the British command.
Harrod dead.
Over.
Was Harrod killed accidentally? Over.
No, over.
By the Germans? Over.
No.
And that's the moment when we as the viewer realize our suspicions are correct. There is an immediate close danger to the mission. It is not the enemy that as we know it.
Yeah. I do. We do need to mention with that radio call the call signs that are used, because it's become so synonymous with this film. This small unit of crack operatives, these, I think I know at the start they say that Clint Eastwood is Army Rangers. Then there's a mention later on of him being OSS. But, it's those type of guys. Their call sign is Broadsword, and the headquarters back in the UK is Danny Boy. So you have Broadsword calling Danny Boy, and it's one of those just enduring lines within cinema.
Yeah,
because it's just cool as hell. Like, I know when I started to work with American forces in Iraq, like when I did private security, I was a contractor for the US Department of Defense. I worked for, your government.
Yeah.
And, you listen to people on the radio and you have to talk to them. And all of these, and I'm not knocking Americans when I say this, but
you're not going to offend me. Go ahead.
Well, Americans come up with these really cool radio call signs, fighter pilots calling themselves Hitman or Maverick or Goose.
Right.
We would occasionally, when I was working on the close protection team for Major General Mike Jones, occasionally we were going into areas where we had armored suburban vehicles to drive them around. And they said, no, we want to use Humvees. We want 50 caliber machine guns. So there was another unit we would get attached to from occasion, and their code name was Rough Riders. So my point in saying all this, there's all these really cool names. And I remember some Americans asking us British guys, what was your call sign? It's like, well, I as a person didn't have a call sign. We don't do that in the British. What's your unit? And it's like, so Bravo 20, the famous book, that is B Squadron, Patrol 2, and 0 is the commander. So during the Gulf War, you had Bravo 10, Bravo 20, and Bravo 30. They were 3 separate patrols sent in behind enemy lines to find Iraq scuds.
Right.
There's nothing cool about it. It's B for B Squadron, 1 or 2 or 3 for the patrol number. And then 0 is basically the commander, because you might have within that team, if it's like an 8-man patrol, it might split off into 2 4-man teams. So then you would have Bravo 2-1, Bravo 2-2. That's it. So
yeah,
I would much rather be called Broadsword.
Yeah. It reminded me. I shouldn't say reminded me, because it's at this point I've been familiar with this film for over 25 years now, so it's most of my life. When they were talking in that way of broadsword calling Danny Boy, it just to me echoed back my time with the combat television show, where they would say, "Checkmate King 2, this is White Rook over. Checkmate King 2, this is White Rook over." And that was a recurring thing throughout that series. Even though it was an American rifle squad, it was the same kind of deal, where it's an interesting set of call signs that you as the viewer get familiar with. And similarly in this film, we get familiar with broadsword calling Danny Boy, which it's one of the famous lines. And I do have clips, I believe, where he's saying that. I just, for some reason, I'm afraid of the copyright gods. By the way, I'm 80% sure that after this video is done, YouTube will be like, "Oh, you can't ad revenue monetize it," so I'll have to probably re-edit it or something. This is Tony's fault for picking one of my favorite movies, so that's, we'll just.
Is this one of your favorite movies?
Oh,
I
yeah.
knew you liked this.
Oh man, this movie, this one, 12 O'Clock High, Lawrence of Arabia, they are in my top 10 films of all time, like easily top 10 movies of all time. Yeah,
I'm really. So I watched this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting down the other night to rewatch it, I was like, "Damn, this is a good film. Why have I not revisited this through adult eyes?"
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of films that I watched. I think I was around the age of seven to I left England at the age of 11. We had a VHS recorder, and my dad's got into this habit of recording the Sunday night movie and things. That's how I first saw First Blood.
Yeah.
He would record them, and even at the age of 7, he wasn't too concerned. I'd been watching samurai movies with beheadings in it with him, and I wasn't a kid who got nightmares, so
yeah,
he didn't. But there were so many films that, at the age of 7 or 8, he recorded and I watched, and I thought was brilliant. And I then revisited through adult eyes going, "Oh yeah, I was lucky I watched that when I was a kid, because now I don't like it." This is the complete reverse. I appreciate this even more.
Yeah, it's one that when I saw it on in college, I saw it on somebody else's borrowed VHS tape. It was an official VHS tape, but it was borrowed, and I had to give it back. And then it was several years later. I didn't have it for a long time, and then it came out on DVD. And I've had it on DVD and then Blu-ray, and then I can't wait. I hope this film gets earmarked for 4K, because I'll buy it immediately when it does. It's just such a great film, as the rest of you will see, the few of you in the chat who haven't seen it, as we move along. Smith, Burton, and Eastwood, they then have to assess the opposition. They have to assess the landscape down below in the valley, both the castle and the German garrison. So here's a little edited bit of that.
Fences can be cut or climbed, Lieutenant.
I doubt if that one can be climbed. It's probably got around 3,000 volts running through it.
No mistake, Lieutenant. This is the headquarters of the Wehrmacht Alpine Corps.
Oh, swell. If you got any other surprises, I think I ought to know about them. And I'm an American. I don't even know why the hell I'm here.
Lieutenant, you're here because you're an American.
It's this. Smith, Burton's character, is so experienced, and again, Clint Eastwood is not a greenhorn. He's an experienced combat soldier, a ranger, fluent in German and all kinds of things. But he is not the espionage guy that Smith is. And Smith is this experienced, very weathered, trained, trial by fire espionage guy. And so he's taking all this in with a kind of, it's not cavalier or even misplaced confidence. It's more of a performance that says, I've done this a few times. Like when he's responding to Eastwood, he's like, yeah, I know that that wire fence is electrified, and I get that there's this whole German garrison here. And he says, but remember, And he says this to him in the same scene. He says, remember, this is an Alpine military training camp. He goes, soldiers come in here to get this training and then go back to their units all the time. He goes, so there are scores of new faces coming and going. He goes, as long as we, keep our heads about us and just act normal and don't call attention to ourselves, they're not going to suspect 6 new faces. Like they're not going to notice us. And Eastwood is just like, okay, great, but I'm an American again. Why am I here? And he's like, because you're American, which will all come around later. Okay, Tony, this next bit that I have, which is the next moment in the film, because for those of you with trained ears, you started to hear it happening. This is one of the biggest anachronisms in the movie, and I'm not sure why they did it, because it doesn't really play a role in the rest of the movie. It's not, and I'll explain in a moment, but here's the clip.
You like my machine?
It was pretty dangerous.
Well, you must try it.
I've looked this up 2 or 3 times. I know that much like, the Germans were trying to develop an atomic bomb just at the same time the Allies were, and there was a lot of that going on. They were trying to get the jet engine, and we were trying to get the jet engine, and we were all in this technological kind of one-upsmanship thing going on.
Yeah.
I know that helicopters had been conceived of, but we did not have helicopters, to my knowledge, in World War II. They had not been perfected on either side yet. I could have that wrong, but I don't think I am.
Look, I'm certainly not an expert, but that's probably, I think, the only thing in this movie that took me out of the movie for a moment.
Yeah,
was me sitting there going, helicopters in World War II?
Right. Because the first thing that happens when you see the shot, you start to hear the MASH theme.
I don't. I hear the theme music to Who Dares Wins, but yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. You're right. Another understandable reflex. Like it's like
yeah. Similar helicopter as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's here's my thing. I don't have as much of a problem with the anachronism in a historical fiction actioner like this, if there is a payoff. But I'm just going to tell everybody, it's this big sight visual. It's this big visual moment as this helicopter comes landing in this thing. And it is appropriately, not rickety, but I mean, appropriately early style helicopter technology. Yeah. It's not like a gunship or anything like that. It's clearly some kind of special transport. It's, you could flick it out of the sky if you wanted to. But they don't do anything with it. It doesn't come back into the story. It's just kind of there at this one moment, which is weird because otherwise this movie is really tight with all of its set pieces and all of its moving parts. So it seems like an indulgence. I'm not sure where that comes from.
Yeah. They're introducing another German character at this point. So, you have to introduce the character, but yeah, it could have been done in another way.
Mm-hmm. Now, people in the chat are
just them going.
Sorry. Go ahead.
It could have been a prototype helicopter. But Michael Schaefer was in here saying the first workable helicopter was actually 1939. So maybe.
Yeah, that's my whole point. Is that even if it's anachronistic to what they had in their combat arsenal in World War II, like maybe they didn't have combat helicopters in World War II.
Yeah.
So even if they never deployed them to the military in reality, I wouldn't have a problem with the helicopter in this story as an arguable prototype, assuming that it plays kind of a role later in the plot, but it doesn't, that I recall. So yeah. Okay. All right. Where are we? They come down into the village of Werfen. They make their way through the back windows of this supply shed that's by the main road leading into the village. And that's where they change out of their Alpine gear into actual German officer and enlisted uniforms. Eastwood and Burton are in officers' uniforms with peaked caps. And then the other 4 guys are dressed as enlisted Wehrmacht. And that's when they then button themselves up and get all tidy, and then they come out the front door of these sheds and blend right in with the rest of the Germans filing in and out of this village. And there's this checkpoint. And as they're walking up to this checkpoint, there's, as you talked about, Tony, this movie is masterful with its tension in every scene. Eastwood starts to get nervous because he sees that checkpoint coming up, which, by the way, everybody, it's identical to the Action Man Escape from Colditz checkpoint. Just wanted to point that out. Two other guys are stopped coming out and their papers are checked. And Eastwood's like thinking, there's no verbal exchange between him and Smith. He's just like, and then Richard Burton just starts having a conversation with him. Now, this is one of those movies, everybody, where everybody speaks English, but with accents. So, if you are not into that kind of thing because you're too modern with your wartime films or whatever, I don't know how to help you. But this is much like Star Trek in that way, where, well, not really like Star Trek at all. It's more like one of those movies where they say in the beginning, all of you have been trained in fluent German. You all know German fluently. So you accept that from this moment on, even though you're hearing English between all these people, they're all speaking German. Okay.
Yep.
If your brain can't get there, I can't help you. But they do make note of it. They're walking up to this thing and this checkpoint, and Burton just cuts in with some random conversation, and Eastwood just has to start picking it up. And I've always thought this conversation is weird, so I wanted to play a clip from it.
But one always hopes that you're the one she'll never forget.
Yeah, what was her name, anyway? Fred. Fred? Oh, yeah, I remember Fred. Yeah, she was a short little redhead.
What? And I'm glad that Eastwood was confused too, because he's like, Fred. And I assume that's like short for a German name, I guess, like Frida or something like that. I don't know. But I've always been kind of like, I'm not getting the joke here. But that's cool. Whatever. Oh yeah, Fred, that little redhead. I'm like, all right, All right, here we go. I am on, where are we? Yes. The next bit, they go into the Hofbrau, where they are supposed to meet up with their contact and let that contact know that they have arrived. And this Hofbrau is, sorry about that. I did not know my phone was on the desk. They have walked into a Hofbrau that is jumping. I mean, it is busy Friday night at the village Hofbrau.
Yep.
And they walk up to the bar and they get their drinks. Eastwood and Burton. They split up from the enlisted guys. They don't want to all be in a group. They say outside the Hofbrau, okay, we're gonna go in, and then you guys, mill about or whatever, and then they're in there. They're at the bar. They get their drinks, and then Burton spies the barmaid. And then he goes over to a table and sits down with it's like an empty seat where two German officers are already sitting. And he just gauchely sits down with them. And they're pissed. Because I don't mean drunk pissed. I mean American version pissed.
Annoyed.
They're annoyed that he is sat down next to them at their table. And this is when we meet Ingrid Pitt's Heidi.
Anything else needed here?
Oh! And who might you be, my pretty alpine rose?
Heidi. I bet you have a beautiful singing voice too.
And then when I've had to cut it for YouTube copyright stuff, but the reason he's whistling at her is because first he tells her, let me sing you a song. And she's like, I hear too much singing. And he's like, okay, well then I'll whistle the tune for you, and he whistles this tune, which is the code for I'm the agent that you've been waiting to arrive. And that's why there's that look on her face. And then he tells her, he pulls her real close and he whispers in her ear. He's like, now slap me as hard as you can, and she's like, oh, and she just belts him across the face and then wanders off. At that point, one of the German officers, he's like, your conduct is not becoming of an officer of the Wehrmacht. You know, and he lies to him, and he gets in his face and he says, well, the next time you address me, you should call me Major Himmler. You know that last name? And the guy's like, oh. He goes back to the bar because Eastwood has witnessed all this happen.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jason Anderson's comment. Right at the bottom.
Oh, that's good.
You know, there's a lot to say about this scene here. I mean, I can imagine watching this in the 1960s. Like, that's a very, very attractive actress wearing a very,
you know,
she's
wearing a
quite tame by today's TikTok standards, where teenagers post videos in bikinis in their mum's hot tub. You know, that really would have got got the blood flowing for a few men in 1968, I think.
Yeah.
But this whole scene here, the complicated plotting and all of that, when I hear people talk about how brilliant a filmmaker Quentin Tarantino is, I'm like, and I'm not about to hate on Tarantino. I really enjoy some of his films. Early Tarantino, late Tarantino, not so much. But I find that Tarantino is I wouldn't call him an excellent filmmaker. He is excellent. He's got an extensive knowledge of cinema. And he can borrow from all these other better things that came before. And piecemeal it all into something. So Inglourious Bastards would not exist if it was not for Where Eagles Dare.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. You are completely correct. Completely correct. Yeah.
So, you know,
that's why that movie's so disappointing, because the trailer for the movie and even the opening scene is Brad Pitt walking amongst the guys. And he's like, we're going to go over there and we're going to kill us some Nazis. And I was sitting there going, awesome. It's a mission movie. It's a World War II classic mission movie. And then it becomes this art house cinema, pretentious, just ridiculous mishmash of garbage. And I'm like, man, I am let down. Like I was really amped after the first scene with Brad Pitt's character, and then nothing. There was no payoff. It was, I saw a comment here. First of all, thank you for the Dillinghammism, Brian.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so, I think that's the first time I've said so in this whole thing. I've really been working hard not to do it. I was doing real well, but I crashed. He walks back to the bar. Eastwood has seen the whole interaction with Heidi.
What were you and that major talking about?
I told him I was Himmler's brother.
Yeah, well, I could see where that would shake him up a little.
He's going, wow, way to go nuclear on your cover. Just way to draw attention, not draw attention to yourself. Well done. We then have a scene where Burton and Heidi go out to the shed adjacent to the Hofbrau where Mary is waiting. And
he likes taking a lady to a shed, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. It's a running theme in this first half of the film. He introduces Heidi to Mary. Mary is now officially attached to Heidi for the rest of her mission. Heidi's going to be the one that camouflages her into the plan. She is now going to pose as Heidi's cousin, who's visiting from another village, and is going to be staying at the castle because they've somehow, through British intelligence, they've managed to get her, using Heidi, I think, is to help out. They've managed to get her a job, Mary, a job at the castle as a secretary. And she's going to be gaining access to the castle that way, ahead of Burton and Eastwood and the other guys being able to infiltrate. Because her job, everybody listening, her job is to make sure that she is at a certain window at a certain time to drop a rope so that they can come up into the castle that way. But we'll see all that visually in a moment. However, they get Mary dressed properly, and then Heidi goes back to the Hofbrau, and then Mary walks in from the front door with her winter coat on as if she's just arrived. Heidi comes running up to her saying, "Oh, my cousin, it's so great to see you. It's been so long, blah, blah, blah." And then Gestapo agent von Hauptmann shows up to introduce himself to Mary because he knows Heidi and he's creepy.
Yeah.
He's super creepy, and he's actually a British actor. He had a really prolific career as a character actor, and apparently for some reason they had him playing Germans a lot. I don't know, but he's a good actor.
Did he play the Tiger Tank commander in Kelly's Heroes as well? Is it the same guy?
It may very well be.
Very unusual face. He's got like big lips.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up.
Guy.
Yeah, he introduces himself overtly to Mary. He's clearly interested in this new arrival.
Yep.
Here's the scene here.
Thank you.
Perhaps when you're ready to take the cable car to the castle, I will have the honor to escort you.
You stay here with your weird secret sex lips.
I couldn't help it. I just couldn't. I'm sorry. I had to do that, everyone. I had to do that.
I love Deadpool.
This may be one of the traditional moments where Michael has screwed up. No, I haven't screwed up. It's there. I just named it something where I thought I screwed up. Excellent. They discover that the big guy that you saw who told Smith when he was leaving the hunting lodge to go get the code book, and he said, "The coffee will be cold when you get back." And he's like, "Well, the best thing is you can't taste cold coffee." They find him dead under a vehicle outside the Hofbrau, like he's been bludgeoned and killed. And they realize, oh, they've struck, the mole has struck again. They've taken out another one of our guys. At that point, German officers storm.
I'll ask you a question. At this point, when you're watching it for the first time, do you have a suspicion on the mole?
That's a great question. It's so hard to say in these movies. I suspected from the moment that one guy, when they find the sergeant dead in the snow, from the moment that guy goes, "Oh, damn it," like that, I'm like, you really oversold that. Like, and again, he's doing a good acting job. Like, it's not bad acting. It's supposed to make you start to suspect people. And so the moment he did that, because he was always kind of the grumpy one, he's the one that wanted to drop 100-pound bombs or whatever on the
which weren't that accurate.
10-ton bomb, 10 ton. Sorry, what were you saying?
Which weren't that accurate in World War II.
Yeah, 10-ton bombs. Yeah, it reminds me of Rambo 4, where the Corinne guy is like, "Yeah, it's a tall boy bomb, British drop, World War II," and you're like, "Dang." I've been suspecting him since the parachute drop. They go back.
So I've been suspecting the female agent,
Mary. Okay.
Yeah. That's when I was revisiting this film this week, because she's separated from the groups, following us around, and to a degree, I'm suspecting Burton somewhat as well.
Burton is a ruthless, brutal character. So, and we know that by this point because of his experience and everything else, and his whole demeanor. That's also a fair guess. The German officers from the garrison in the village come bursting into the Hofbrau. because somebody has tipped off the German garrison that there are 5 or 6 British spies in German uniforms who have infiltrated the village. And that now ups the ante even more, because not only is one of their guys killed, their second guy's been killed, but now they've been given away. And at that point,
I just wanted to point out real quick, that
Yeah.
second guy who gets killed, the
Mhm.
one with that incredible jawline,
Mhm.
he is one of the choir singers in Zulu.
Oh, that's right. That's
And
right.
Richard Burton narrates the intro to
Uh-huh.
Zulu, explaining the Battle of Islandwana. So there's a
Yep.
little bit of never mind 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's just 2 degrees of Burton.
Oh, yeah. These films were made within a few years of each other. It wasn't long. It was like, I think it was 2 years on either side. Might have even been a single year between these films. I can't recall, but it wasn't long. Like these were films from the same era.
And it's interesting that in 1968, Clint Eastwood wasn't the legend that he went on to become. And it's you go back and you look at his, Clint Eastwood plays Clint Eastwood, but the confidence in his performance, that star power, it's almost as though you get almost tricked into thinking, oh yeah, he made this in between Dirty Harry 1 and 2. Like, no, this was a long time before.
Yep.
It was almost would have been a bit of a gamble to cast him, I would say, but
yeah, it was coming off of his success with the spaghetti westerns. And he had come from the TV show Rawhide to do those westerns, and now he was really coming into his own in the late 60s prior to Dirty Harry. Yeah, absolutely. The officers come in and they say, we know that there are infiltrators. Everybody, they do the classic thing where it's like, we are going to check everybody's papers. Everybody will be questioned. And this results in the most lackadaisical, and I don't mean that critically. We talked about Burton's character's confidence. The whole time he's been around the horn so many times in these situations. And
and what the story uncovers as well is that Burton has a lot more knowledge of this mission and where they're going than any of the other people in the group.
Yep.
So when you say, it's not like a cocky overconfidence. He has planned this mission to the final detail. He knows everything about the facility that they're going to, and he's prepared for every eventuality through intelligence. As in army intelligence, not brain intelligence.
Yeah, he looks at all the guys, because the guys dressed as enlisted men have come in at that point. And they're all sitting at one table in the corner of the Hofbrau, and he says, Burton says, to your point, he's like, we're going to stand a better chance outside than we are in here. He goes, so there's no point in starting a fight in here, and they're not going to let anybody out till all the papers are checked. He goes, and it's very likely that they'll find some kind of discrepancy. He doesn't say this literally, but it's in his voice. So we might as well just give ourselves up. And it's the coolest, most confident, preemptive surrender I've ever seen. Like, he's like, yeah, we can lean into this as part of the plan. No big deal. And then he looks at him and he's like, see you after the war. Like, it's like, what? Like, so here's a montage of clips from it. Let me just show you this. Oh, I've made a mistake. Oh no, it's Ingrid Pitt in slow motion. I don't know how this got in here. Oh, sorry about that, everyone. All right. Yeah, I'll get back to the real
I'm just waiting for all the complaints in the chat, but we didn't get any complaints.
So here comes the you're going to see 2 clips in a row here, everyone. You're going to see the surrender, and then you're going to see a brief moment of what happens when the 2 officers, because Eastwood and Burton are dressed as officers, the guy decides to split them up from the enlisted men and put them in a staff car and take them directly to the castle. So you'll see part of that as well stitched together. So here we go.
Well,
What is it, Major?
Colonel, myself and the others are the ones you're looking for. We've come to surrender.
Lieutenant, take the 3 men away for questioning. The officers will come with me.
The best dummy through a windshield I've ever seen in a movie. The best. So now we've already had a parachute drop. This tension building espionage with, there's a fox in the hen house as well, and now we've already had an action scene with a motor car and a bunch of dead Nazis, and they pile them all back. Literally, Clint Eastwood just dumps one of the bodies over the soft top of the vehicle, crunching it in. It's just like a pile of corpses on the top of this car. And then they just roll the car off the cliff. And in classic Hollywood fashion, the car explodes on the way down. It's great. I don't care what anybody says.
Okay, most cars don't just explode when they fall down the cliff, but who cares?
Exactly.
I do want to quickly point out, when Michael refers to the fox in the hen house, that's not a reference to Ingrid Pitt in the woodshed.
They go back at that point to the village because they've escaped. Eastwood and Burton have escaped the Germans. God knows how long it'll take people to figure out that staff car never got back to the castle. But they go back to that supply shed, and they get all of those bags full of dynamite and time bombs and all this stuff they've brought with them for this elaborate plan. And then they sneak off to another area. In the meantime, Heidi takes Mary to the castle, escorted by creepy sex lips. And they go up into the castle, and Heidi takes Mary to her room and shows her, this is where I've stashed your pistol if you need it. This is where I've got, she basically gives her kind of a brief rundown of how to get in touch with her and all that kind of stuff. And tells her a little bit about some of the personnel in the castle.
Yeah.
I have a clip here. Oh yeah, this is the next bit. Creepy sex lips Gestapo guy. He splits up from them when yeah, right. He splits up from them when they reach the castle, and he very arrogantly sits on the desk of the secretary of the commanding SS officer, the guy who received the dude who landed in the helicopter. And that commanding officer comes out, and it's clear not all is well in the within the German high command. They do not like each other.
If they are foreign agents, then I am to be informed at once.
You were not here, Major.
Then you find me, Colonel.
My duty is to inform you, but not to search every guest house in the village to locate you.
He's angry that he's heard that there were 6 British, or at this point 5 British agents caught in German uniforms, and he was not informed prior to their arrest. And the guy's like, "You weren't here." And then he says to him later in that conversation, he basically tells the von Hauptmann creepy sex lips guy, he says, "I am an officer of the SS." He's like, "I am not some lieutenant in the Wehrmacht that you can just boss around and intimidate." He's like, "So you need to get your shit together, because I'm not going to do it for you." In the background, Smith, Burton, and Eastwood are sneaking into the castle. And the way they're doing it is Mary and Heidi and creepy sex lips, they got into the castle via the cable car that you saw in the binocular shot. There's a cable car that leads up to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Eastwood and Burton decide to ride on the top of the cable car on the actual roller mechanism. They're above the cable car, getting up to this very impressive, whatever those things are that the cable cars stable into at the side of a mountain, whatever that is. Those things. Yeah.
The station, the cable car station.
The station, yeah. The Elephant and Castle station of the, yeah. So this is them climbing the castle.
You wouldn't mind giving me a hand, would you?
Obviously, I had to cut out a lot of that for the copyright gods, but there's a lot of tension as they ice axe the top of that sloping roof, and then they, one of them slips, and then they make their way to the side where she's got the rope waiting for them. This is the area that I was telling you about, Tony, where my eyebrow goes up, because that cable car is at such an angle going up the side of the mountain, right? And there are a bunch of German troops that are stationed to operate the station at the other end. The angle being what it is, they can, I know it's supposed to be nighttime, so maybe that's a factor, but they can see the top of the cable car as easily as anything else. And it gets very, very close, obviously, goes right on into the station. They jump off of it before, but at that close range, I would think that some of those Germans would have seen two guys on top. And then especially after they jump onto the roof, Clint Eastwood's axe, or I can't remember if it's Eastwood or Burton's axe, loses.
Eastwood, yeah.
His legs are dangling off for a moment. And I'm going, no German is like, was ist das? Like, I get it that it's not completely implausible to suggest that they've had so many cable cars, it's rote, they're not looking up or down at this point. It's not a huge issue, but with the way that it's framed and with the brightly lit interior of the station, sometimes when I watch that scene, I just think,
this is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. Is anorexic.
So it's but hey, it's certainly not a knock against the movie. The movie's brilliant.
Well, see, for me, that didn't particularly stand out as jarring to me. What did, the rope climb up the side of the castle, like, that's very, very taxing. You have to be very physically strong to climb a rope.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there going, I believe that Clint Eastwood can do that. I can't believe that Burton can. Certainly not at Burton in this film, because he's lucky he's in this, cold weather warfare outfit, because you can tell he's a little bit portly around the midriff.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of fat people. I'm a bit portly around the midriff myself.
We all are.
I can't climb a rope like that. I could 10 years ago when I had more of a Clint Eastwood type frame.
Right.
To be honest, I mean, how old's Clint Eastwood now? Like
99?
I think Clint Eastwood could still climb that rope now.
Yeah, probably could.
Yeah.
George, I'm just the messenger here. The line, and I just watched it this afternoon before we did the show. He says, I am an officer in the SS and not some lieutenant that you can bully or intimidate. So yeah, there's probably an inaccuracy there with the clothing, but I go with what the line says. So
yeah. Yeah, look, this is a very thrilling boys' own adventure story, but it's fictional.
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving the film a lot of latitude for the fact it's fictional.
Yep.
Throw a bit of latitude our way as well.
Yeah. At this point, Burton and Eastwood are in the castle thanks to Mary, and they have to case the joint essentially and take out all possible alarms before the plan goes into motion. And Eastwood is kind of taking his marching orders from Burton, because Burton is very deliberately playing a lot of this plan close to the vest. It's a on a need to know basis kind of thing for the American Ranger. He's not a meathead or anything. He's a thinker. He knows how to do stuff, but he's they start taking out the high risk, the critical areas first, the radio rooms, things like that. So Eastwood goes to work.
Hello?
And what you don't see, because I had to cut it all out, is in the background, Richard Burton is running interference. They're working together. So Richard Burton makes sure that the guys who were warming their hands out by the oil drum, the fire in the oil drum or whatever in the courtyard where the helicopter landed, he goes over there and warms his hands and talks to them and keeps them distracted while Eastwood sneaks into the radio room and takes out some people. Because their whole point is to ensure that they have as much time as possible to find General Carnaby and also execute on this broader plan, which that's the one thing where I wasn't sure how they knew. It's almost like a Palpatine level of omniscience. They know somehow that all the high-ranking officers are in the banquet hall of the castle with Carnaby, and they're interrogating him. I'm not sure how they knew that. It's not super important but it's, it's not something where I want to check my brain at the door. It's more of a, how'd they know that? But it's cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe Heidi had a line. Maybe she didn't. I'm going to go back and watch it again, obviously 700 more times before I die. But maybe Heidi had a line or something where she said, there's going to be a meeting tonight or whatever. But there might not be, because I don't quite remember.
It's also this to me as well. Clint Eastwood has said to Burton's character a number of times, like, "Why am I here?" Like,
yeah, why am I here?
This is when you realize why Clint Eastwood's here. He is not just Army Ranger, OSS. They actually refer to him at one point as an assassin. You're like, he's the guy you bring in when you just want to kill a load of Nazis while someone else is getting on with the mission.
He's the guy they should have gotten to go back to the bridge on Kwai, not the Canadian kid. No slander to Canadians, just identifying him from our previous conversation. There are plenty of amazing Canadian soldiers, but in that context, not that Canadian kid from Kwai who couldn't do what he needed to do. Eastwood's the guy you bring in. Yeah.
Eastwood is the guy who should have been in Anthony Mackie's role in The Hurt Locker. There's that scene where Jeremy Renner's character's like, "Oh, I left my gloves down there," and he's all cut, and he runs down, and they actually have a discussion about what if it actually just went. Eastwood would just be like,
"Yep,
Jeremy Renner,
yeah, exactly,
cop that, Hawkeye."
Yeah, right. It's what I like too is that there's no. I don't have a problem with modern filmmaking techniques. I'm not some old grump, but I also like it when there is a reason for motivated filmmaking like that, or stylized filmmaking, and there's no need for it here. That's another thing I love about this movie is even though it's in the late 60s where there was a lot of stylization going on back then, like with the what I call the Brady Bunch effect, where it's like the panels of different things, which they did a lot of in the late 60s with movies like Grand Prix, things like that. This film, and it didn't matter what movie, what the genre of the movie was back then. There were a lot of these filmmakers, like there are today, who they do the trendy, stylish stuff. These filmmakers were like, that's not necessary here. We're just going to show Clint Eastwood murdering these guys. We don't need to have like Brady Bunch paneling going on or zoom lenses or anything that was hot in the late 60s. It's all very well done.
I mean, Clint Eastwood with an MP40, and I would like to know how many rounds of ammunition that was used on this production, because it takes a while before we get to the action, which is good because it's so much more of a reward when we get there.
Yeah.
But oh man, I loved it. I loved every minute of this.
Oh yeah, because this is how the movie earns the action sequences, like better than any other film. Kieran says Burton was only 43 and fueled by plenty of booze. I guess referring to how he could get up the rope. Jason Anderson says Burton was a human alcohol burning funny car.
Was Richard Burton 43 when he was in this film?
Mm-hmm. I'm 43.
So... I'm 44.
Uh-huh.
And I'm also a human alcohol burning funny car at times.
True, but there's a difference because you've got a lot of muscle memory, which I don't think Burton actually had. So
the only muscle memory he had was
and then somebody said, oh yeah, Jason Anderson says, he says Clint Eastwood in this film is basically Cotton Hill. I killed 50 men.
Cotton Hill, is that from another movie? I don't.
That's from the TV show King of the Hill. He's
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's yeah. Hank Hill's dad. He's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm finding I was reading the chat too much and I've lost my way through the clips. So here we go. We have them taking out the guys in the radio rooms, and then they go into the banquet hall where the German high-ranking officers are interrogating General Carnaby, who is refusing to divulge information about the Second Front, D-Day. They have this, what I can only describe as the perfect evil Fraulein, who is their secretary, who has the little leather case, or maybe it's a little box case of all of the truth serums and syringes that she's going to use to get everything out of him. And this moment occurs. I'm sorry if you heard that. I apologize. I didn't know my Facebook was still up. It's starting to ding. Burton and Eastwood come into the room with their MP40s, and they cover everybody. And at the banquet table are the three guys on their team who were the enlisted men. And it's already very apparent that these three guys were turncoats. They were all German spies of some kind. They're at the table in a very friendly kind of way, if I recall, at first. And then this occurs.
Lieutenant, drop that gun.
What?
Drop that gun and sit down.
What the hell are you talking about?
Sit down.
This is where I debated Tony ending War Stories tonight. I didn't do it, but I actually debated not pulling any more clips and just going, and now go watch the film, everyone.
Yeah.
Because how easily did you follow the plot from this moment forward?
Not easily. Like I wish I had have sat down earlier in the week to watch this. The reason I did, I managed to get a Blu-ray copy. It only arrived middle of the week. I did have a lot of trouble, and I'm like, this needs a repeat viewing. And I wish I had have had time to get that repeat viewing in before this, but just go, yeah, I was somewhat lost, but then the action kicks in, and you're like, there's something about Clint Eastwood with an MP40 and with Ingrid Pitt with an MP40. It just this is cinematic glory.
He begins to explain to the German high-ranking officers that these three men were, and I again, this is a very convoluted thing. So guys, if I get this backwards, shout out in the chat for those of you who know the movie real well. The way I understand it is he basically lies to the commanding officers, saying that these guys are actually infiltrators. They're actually British people masquerading as your German agents that the British don't realize are German agents. And they've now come back to dupe you guys into believing that they're the guy from before. He goes, and my job was to reveal all this. And they're like, huh? They're like, and then what would happen to you? He's like, well, then I would have snuck away and made my way out through Switzerland after it's over. You know, after I solved this problem for the German high command, I was going to, you know, sneak my way out or whatever. I'm simplifying some of that, everybody. It is a very brilliantly written, but convoluted bit of writing. Okay.
Yeah.
While
I do imagine it would have been much different experience in reading the book. I haven't read the book. I have read some Alistair MacLean novels in my time, not this particular one.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. As Jason says, I'm the dude disguised as the dude pretending to be the other dude. So yes, Jeff is correct. Smith was counterintelligence. Yeah. Oh, Werewolf by Lunchtime. Thank you so much for the kind super chat. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you for everything you do. You are very welcome. You are
yes,
very
you
welcome.
are. Werewolf by Lunchtime, which is fairly soon because he's also in the same time zone as me.
Oh yeah.
Werewolf by Lunchtime lives in Perth, so
nice. Okay. In the background, while this is happening in the banquet hall, Creepy Sex Lips has insisted that Mary go down with him to the castle canteen to have a drink with him, a schnapps.
Yes.
Come with me down to the canteen where we can have a schnapps. That is not inappropriate, is it? You know, like he's very that kind of German, you know, and very yes, very cliche. Yeah. The scene opens with him basically doing a soft Gestapo interrogation as if it's a social occasion. He's asking her about her time at such and such university, which is part of her resume. It's part of her CV that she gave to the German secretary, you know, because she's undercover as this other person. And he's like, I seem to remember the building was on the other side of the square. And so it's kind of this thing where he's suspicious of everybody. He's, you know, interrogating everybody. This is a clip from the scene.
I seem to remember that the cathedral was on the other side of the square.
I haven't been to Dusseldorf for 3 years. It's very easy to forget.
She's understandably nervous. Like, why on earth did I have to be less than 90 minutes probably, or 2 hours into my mission, you know, behind enemy lines, I have to run into this guy who just keeps hounding me like a dust bunny on the end of my skirt. Like it's like I did not anticipate this guy even being part of my scenario. And now I'm having to deal with him. So while he's fishing for whether or not she's who she says that she is, it's going back to the banquet hall where he says, Burton says to the commanding guys, and of course he's got Clint Eastwood sitting in a chair, you know, thinking that he's just been betrayed. And he says, the way that we can prove all of this is these guys here, if they want to prove that they are who they say they are, then they need to write down the names of all of our embedded spies that they work with when they're over in Britain, all of our contacts, because I have the master list here in my hand. He's like, so if their names match up with what's in this, he said, then they're obviously they are who they say they are. He goes, but if they're not who they say they are, and I'm telling you they're not, they won't be able to write these names down. That's what I'm saying. And there's this moment here that I wanted to show. It's very brief, but it's when one of the German officers who hears about what he calls himself, instead of Smith now, he says his real name is Johann Schmidt. He goes, my real name is Johann Schmidt. I am an agent for the German High Command. I've been a spy for however many years, and we've been trying to root out. We knew that these British people were going to assume the identities of our former German agents, and so I've been trying to head them off, you know, or whatever. And then when he says the thing about, well, what's going to happen to you after that? Well, what was your plan? He's like, well, then I was going to just, you know, make my way out through Switzerland. and get back into the the British system. And the German has this reaction.
It's incredible.
Yes. But to the British, very, very simple.
It's incredible. But to the British, very, very simple. Like it's proto Bond types. Even though Bond was already a movie series, if you take it temporarily, it's very proto Bond type stuff. They ask him, well, you're saying that these guys are all dirty and that they're all the enemy. But yeah, you've called, because he calls in a guard. He asks them, hey, can you call in one of your guards to cover this whole shindig so I can put this rifle down? Because I don't want to have to be covering everybody while I'm telling you all this stuff. So that endears them oddly psychologically to him even more, because it's like, oh, he wants to put his gun down and just start talking. He wants one of our guys covering the whole thing. So clearly, and they're like, well, how can you prove who you are? Now, how can you prove who you are? The first thing he does is he intimidates the hell out of General Carnaby, and he forces him to give up his real name, who is Cartwright Jones. He's he's Private Cartwright Jones. He's an actor that has been put in place, and he's like, see, I told you, this guy is only here to fool you as part of this grand Allied scheme. He's not real. Like, it's not.
And in a meta sort of multiverse way, I remember sitting there having been only very recently that we covered Bridge on the River Kwai, I was like, oh, in a meta universe, this actor would have been the guy pretending to be the officer on the Bridge on the River, the William Holden character.
Right.
I was just, imagine it's him.
Oh, that would have been great. That would have been great. Then they say, well, okay, that's great and all that you know that, but you need to prove who you are. And so I have a cut down version of how he proves it.
Put a radio telephone call through to Field Marshal Kesselring's headquarters in Italy and ask for his chief of intelligence.
Then tell him he's a traitor.
Tell him he's a renegade.
Yeah, that is Schmidt, no question about it.
That was a simplified version, but he basically tells the guy, get on the phone, call the high command office, wake this certain person up, talk to him. And the guy says, okay, I've got a dude claiming to be Johann Schmidt here. And he's like, well, what does he look like? And he says, ask him to show you his forearm. And he says, okay. And he shows him his forearm, and he goes, are there two scars that are like 3 centimeters apart that are this however long? And he's like, yeah. And then he says, ask him this question, what's his answer? Ask him this question, what's his answer? Which you saw. And he's like, yeah, he's definitely Johann Schmidt. So now he's convinced all of them that he is this high-ranking German spy that works personally for the German high command or whatever. So he's lured them into his thrall. And he gets the secretary, the Fraulein, to hand out notebooks, blank notebooks, to the 3 turncoats, or 3 German spies. And he has them start writing the names down in these books. And I feel like, Tony, that if you were in this situation, you know what? Maybe I should rephrase that question. Can you even visualize yourself in a situation like this? I don't mean that from your military experience. I just mean as a moviegoer. Like, can you, I can't get, no. I'm not saying it's unrealistic. It's very well written, but it's one of the few times in a movie where I'm going, if I found myself in a situation like this, I don't know if I had done a lot of things right or a lot of things very wrong, like in my life. Like,
yep.
So, while they're writing the names down, this is probably one of my favorite moments in the whole film, because there's no dialogue, and Burton is relying on Eastwood's proven intelligence up until this point to pick up on nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Right here.
What were we in Berlin, mate?
Double agents.
I'm sorry that I put an Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull scene in this presentation. I am truly sorry. I do not in any way mean to infer that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is comparable in quality by 1 iota to Where Eagles Dare. It is not. I simply needed a moment of revelation from another film about being double agents. And I had not seen that movie in a long time. And when I rewatched that scene to drop it in there just now, or a few hours ago, he actually says, as you heard in the clip, what were we in Berlin during the war? And I'm going, another film that ganked something from Where Eagles Dare.
Yep.
I don't really know how Indiana Jones could be a successful double agent within the German military or whatever in World War II after everything he did.
I don't know how Ray Winston could either.
I know, right? Yeah.
I actually think Harrison Ford's got a better chance. But
yeah. Even though Indiana Jones would be known throughout the Reich at that point as an enemy of the state, like after everything he'd been through. But that would be funny to see Ray Winston trying to embed himself in the German high command. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Frankfurt. Yeah. No way. Did you see Black Widow?
I struggled through it, yeah.
I can't recall. Did he do a Russian accent in that movie?
Was he in that movie?
Ray Winston, yeah. He was the head honcho.
Oh my God, he was, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. I don't think he did. If he
I don't
did,
think he can. Ray Winston is not just English. He is a Londoner. He's a Cockney Londoner.
Yeah. I love him to death. I mean, Robin of Sherwood. I love him to death, but I don't know. I don't know. Kieran, I toyed with it, but I couldn't find an organic reason to put one in. So those happen organically. So, yeah. You have to use your Kylie clip sparingly, everybody. You can't just slap one in there. Okay, where are we? We are at the moment where. Oh yes. Okay. So Burton gives the signal, and Eastwood makes the move.
Just relax. Second-rate punk, huh?
All I could think of on the spur of the moment.
Thanks, that even makes it worse.
He had called him earlier when he made him think that he was turning on him. He had called him a second-rate punk, and I love that exchange. I just think it's great. But what you were seeing there, everybody, is one of the German high-ranking officers. Burton hands him the alleged list, the notebook of the real names to compare against what these guys have all written down in these books. When he opens it up, he realizes it's all blank, and Burton already has, the other notebooks. So this was all a ruse to ferret out the double agents within the British Army or the British OSS.
Yeah, not just the ones around this table.
Right.
It's like, all right, give us the names of all the other ones in. It's such a brilliant kind of, possibly slightly implausible, but it is a great bait and switch.
Yes.
You're back and forth, within a few minutes there. Yeah, very well done.
Yeah, it's extremely well done. And I think the most brilliant thing about it is that he's got everybody in a contained room. And the other hurdle that he has that we all now know Burton has, because we've gotten connected to these characters through the great writing, is he now has the added challenge that he knew he would have going in. This isn't like something that happened that became a complication. He knew he was going to have to orchestrate all this to get these names that they needed to ferret out all of the Germans that are embedded over in England. And then on top of that, he was going to have to arrange it in such a way that these guys, nobody got away to reveal that Johann Schmidt was no longer a viable German counteragent. He's still got to maintain, he's got to find a way to do all this while preserving the most valuable asset he has, which is his position within the German high command. It's stellar writing. Like, it's just stellar subtext and everything like that. It's great. Unfortunately, there is a complication that occurs when Creepy Sex Lips decides, after his schnapps with Mary, he has this disturbance in the force thing going on where he's always assuming something's going on behind his back. And of course, he's right. There's this big interrogation of General Carnaby going on, and he catches them all down there. And he catches Clint Eastwood and Tim Burton. He catches Clint Eastwood and the director.
That would have been a very different film.
Oh, no. Clint Eastwood and the director of Beetlejuice are holding MP40s on the Germans. He catches all these, he catches Burton and Clint Eastwood holding submachine guns on all these German officers. And Burton, thinking on his feet, because he's like, what's going on here? And he's holding his Luger, at everybody. And Burton just doesn't miss a beat. The guy like has ice water in his veins. Like, he's just whatever. He's like, I'm so glad you're here. We've just caught all of these officers in a conspiracy to overthrow the high command and overthrow Hitler or something. And he's like, I've got the names of all the conspirators here in these books, and he's like, well, show them to me. And because that guy is just such an indoctrinated, Nazi that he'll believe anything, like that. That's like crack cocaine for him. Like, this will help me with my standing with the German if I can break up a conspiracy. This occurs.
Bring some here.
Smith.
And Eastwood does his thing where he's ready and he stops the Gestapo guy by killing him, and then he stops the dude from getting on the phone and alerting the castle. It's such good filmmaking. It's hard to even it's hard to do it justice in a show like this. I think it's so good.
Yeah.
But we're gonna try. Tony, I feel like I've been over talking this whole thing. I apologize. I feel like I've been saying too much. What are your thoughts on this sequence in the film, as far as the rising tension, the revelation of the double agent, the way he coerces everybody, the chess machinations that are happening here?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating character, the way it's written, and it's it is that emotional roller coaster, and you're like, well, this is not a movie where the audience is expected to just switch your brain off and go enjoy it. No, you have to engage your brain here, or you will not keep up with what's going on.
Yep.
And it's sort of tension rises, and Burton's got an answer. Next thing, Burton's got an answer. Next thing, and then it gets to a point where all of a sudden, the movie, the actors, the story says, dear audience, you've been enjoying this suspenseful thriller. Now we're going full-blown action. And it is so, it's made so much better because it's so well deserved. The movie has earned its place to go full brass and cordite right now. So
yeah. It is. It's a film where that slow climb of the roller coaster is actually palpable. It's not contrived. And then
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And we're now here. When I say it's a good kind of slow, it's not a bad kind of slow. It's a tension kind of slow. It's a suspense, edge of your seat kind of pace. And then you get here, and that's where we are right now. Right as Mary distracted the Gestapo officer and he gets shot, Now we're in the downswing. Burton's intention at this point is to try and bring these double agents back to Britain. I don't know why. I'm not sure why, but that's what he's going to try and do. He sends Eastwood out into the castle to execute on the next step of the plan, which is dynamite. Like he's now got these strategic areas where he's got timed bundles of dynamite with timed triggers on them. And Eastwood starts doing his thing. He's looking for key emplacements, ACAC guns, other things that they already know they need to. It's like killing two birds with one stone. It'll distract the whole garrison, and it'll also take out certain key pieces of equipment that they would need to stop us. Then we have possibly the most famous scene in the movie, the gun battle in the castle.
Yes.
It's all the action scenes that come after this are equally as good, but this castle battle, I believe this castle battle and all of the espionage within the castle leading up to it, including the paradrop, all of it inspired games like Medal of Honor. I think the whole Medal of Honor series was inspired by this movie. Honestly, I really do.
And I see so many influences from here that pop up in other films.
Mm-hmm.
I always lose track of what this movie's called in America. Is it Leon? Is it The Professional?
Now it's called Leon the Professional, and it's the international cut.
Okay, Leon the Professional.
Mm-hmm.
He's trapped in his apartment, you know, after Gary Oldman's bring everyone, you know, they all turn up. And you got like, you know, these black-clad SWAT team police, and they come out into the corridor with a tripod-mounted machine gun, and you're like, this is the castle battle and where Eagle's there. When they bring in the MG42 and they put it up on the tripod, and if bikers, it's amazing for me not really remembering this film much from childhood to watch it over the last couple of days, and right throughout this film you're going, that's where that film got that from. That's where that film, all these other films that I've, you know, either enjoyed or not enjoyed over the years. You know, I've already mentioned Inglourious Basterds. There are so many. This film has influenced so many predecessors, successors, films that followed.
Successors, successors. Yeah. The successor to The Professor. If Biker Scout is still in the chat, I don't know if he is, but earlier Biker Scout mentioned that, you know, Star Wars borrowed a lot from this movie. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Biker Scout, because this, you know, they're infiltrating a huge headquarters of the enemy. They have to dress up like the enemy to blend in, much like the Death Star in the first Star Wars film. But there is also this gun battle that happens in the castle. They unsuccessfully try to get to a strategic radio room in the castle. They're not able to kill the radio operator before he sets off the alarm. And then they know that the jig is up, and Richard Burton gets on the radio, and Clint Eastwood's going to hold them off while they figure out how they're going to drop a rope and get down out of the castle, back to the cable car, and then get out of there. So I put together this compilation. I hope you all enjoy it to show you how much a movie like Star Wars has drawn inspiration from Where Eagles Dare.
We got company.
Broadsword calling Danny Boy.
Look, we're gonna have company!
How do I get this? Okay, so I screwed that up. Sorry, everybody. I didn't remember to turn off the watermark. Whoops. Anyway, Han Solo was never that cool. He's cool, but he was never that cool. I think we can all agree after seeing that clip.
I don't know if you could see me in the little icon in the bottom of StreamYard there.
Yeah.
I was just grinning from ear to ear through that whole thing.
It is so it's so obvious to people in our generation who have watched Star Wars 100 times. The first time you see this sequence in Where Eagles Dare, you go, wow, like you were already kind of you already kind of make the comparison when you first watch the film, because they get in the uniforms of the enemy and go in to this big fortress. Like that's kind of, but when you start to see that, it's like, wow, like this is really inspired by Where Eagles Dare. I mean, just yeah.
Everyone talks about not just Star Wars, but George Lucas as drawing so much inspiration from Akira Kurosawa films.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars being somewhat based on Hidden Fortress, and then you show someone that, and you're like, yeah, there's a lot more going on than just Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah, exactly. We then have them get back to the cable car, and they have to try and activate the cable car while keeping the Germans out of the station. They have to barricade the door to keep them from getting in there while they get that cable car moving. In that sequence, the three, it's the three enlisted guys, the three double agents or whatever. One of them fell out of the rope on the way down, I believe. One of them fell.
Yes. Yep.
On the rope. So one of them's already been killed. Out the window of the castle. The other two decide to try and make a break for it, and they try and hijack one of the cable cars, and Burton he jumps onto the cable car to stop them. And there's this huge worthy of 007 fight on top of the cable car and around the cable car as Burton stops them from getting away. Here's a clip from it. He's hitting them with ice axes. They've got gash wounds, and they're trying to fight him off and everything. And he then jumps onto the reverse cable car that's coming back up the mountain. He gets away from that because he's left them a little present. It's
now I can't help myself sometimes when you're watching a film I can't help myself but nitpick at times. Sometimes a movie is so enjoyable that you can let things slide. Like having been trained in Arctic warfare, I'm not saying that right from the beginning when they first parachute in and things like that, I'm not saying that they wouldn't be moving around in the snow just in boots and not snowshoes. Well, side note, that would have been very physically demanding on the actors. All of the walking that they did in knee-deep snow. I'm like, why are they not using snowshoes and things like that? That's I remember when that exploded. I'm like, so you know how a cable car works, right? There's one long continuous cable that goes through a pulley at the bottom, comes down, pulley at the top. And I'm thinking, when that blew up,
I can see where you're going.
Burton regret it if it snapped the cable. Because all the cars would come down.
So they, I guess they weren't on separate loops, is what you're saying. They were both on the same big loop. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know about this particular one, but I've been on. I remember when I was in Vietnam a few years ago, there was a cable car up to the top of this mountain that me and my dad went on. And, it had about 10 cars, I think, constantly, and they were all on the same cable. But a bit like a ski lift,
Right.
So yeah, I'm not picking the film. That did pop into my head, and I just thought,
Tony, this is RetroBlasting. You're allowed to nitpick whatever you want.
I'm just saying, it would have been, because it's Richard Burton.
And
I really wish they had have cast Oliver Reed in the Burton role. He would have been fantastic. I love Oliver Reed, especially when he's drunk. But so he jumps from one cable car to the other. The cable car explodes. I would just like to have seen that moment of revelation on a face, a bit like Ingrid Pitt had in the bar when he does the whistle.
Yep.
I have a look on his face change when he goes, "Oh crap, I just cut the cable."
Yeah, that's a great point. I've never paid attention to. I need to go back and look at the mechanics of the cable cars and see if they're on two separate loops or they're on one big loop, like you pointed out, because they do make a very careful explosion that kind of goes down and almost like it pops the pulleys away from the box itself, which you're right is how do we put it?
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. Is anorexic.
It's one of those moments, but there have been action movies since then that have really gone bridges too far, for sure. So okay, we are now at the point where the movie just goes for broke. The movie pulls a Temple of Doom in the best ways possible. Like, when Temple of Doom, after he snaps out of the trance and then he shows up in that low shot where he's going to save all the kids, the movie just goes for broke at that point. This movie does the same thing. It kind of goes for broke with the castle fight, which is really good. But then after they blow up that cable car and they get down to the bottom, you think, well, where can the movie go from here? Well, earlier in the film, after Clint Eastwood and Burton escaped the German staff car and got back to their equipment, they had mined the entire road. They had put those time dynamites around every single tree and telephone pole all the way down the road. And you're going, weird. They have these tripwires and stuff. Which is odd because they banked on no other vehicles driving by and hitting those wires.
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. Is anorexic.
I love this movie, by the way. I really love this movie.
They were putting them on the sides of the roads.
Yes. He did have to. Yes, they were. They weren't all the way across. They were on their telephone poles, and then they were put on the safety things to indicate the edge of the road. They're like those
delineators, I think they call them. Yeah.
Yes. I'm
so when they're escaping, they end up in this bus with the snowplow, and then they use the snowplow, I think, to kind of push the explosives. Am I right?
Yep, you are.
I feel like a Star Wars fan at the moment, trying to explain why.
No, you're correct. You're correct.
I feel like a Book of Boba Fett fan trying to explain.
No, you're correct. You're correct because the ones on the telephone poles were not across the road. They were only to the edge of the road poles, the indicators that this is the edge of this road where there's a cliff on the off the side. So you don't want to put your tires beyond these markers. So it was pole to marker. It was maybe like 3 feet, and you're not supposed to be driving into those things anyway. So no, you're absolutely correct.
So they use a bus with a snowplow on the front to hit those poles, get those poles to knock over so they detonate.
Yeah. So earlier
when they were laying those dynamite devices, how did Johann Schmidt, Tim Burton, we're calling him now, how did Smith know that there was going to be a bus with a snowplow in a barn?
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. Is anorexic.
Not really. I mean, they remember earlier in the film, they when they get their equipment and then they sneak out through there's like an accident or something with like some German vehicles are on fire or something, and they have to kill a few guys. They get out through that motorcycle and sidecar that they steal, and they get to that garage, and then they put all their equipment in that bus. So that must have been prearranged by Heidi as part of the plan. She was going to have a snowplow bus, requisitioned for them, because we do see it earlier in the movie.
I remember seeing it earlier because they actually he gets Clint Eastwood, check the engine, let's make sure it starts.
Yep.
And having only seen it once since I was 8 years old, I was sitting and I was trying to remember, did they check the engine in that? Was that before they laid all the dynamite? And I started to think about it, and then I went, Tony, it's Clint Eastwood, Ingrid Pitt, and MP40s. Just enjoy.
I couldn't have said it better myself. They then get in that bus for their final run out the gauntlet. Not a reference to the Clint Eastwood movie, The Gauntlet, but we'll take it as part of this discussion.
Yeah.
So they get in the bus, and here's an edited clip of some of the amazing action that happens during this sequence. Oh, whoops. Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, here is the Road to Destruction sequence, as I've called it. If you don't like this movie, I don't know if I can be your friend. All right. Like I just don't know, because I'm usually not one to sit there and say, and I'm half kidding with this, but honestly, like, I'll be your friend if you don't like this movie, but I will look at you sideways a little bit. I will give you side eye, because I'm like, what is there not to like about this movie? That's just a fraction of the action that happens in these sequences.
Yeah, and it's not a short escape. It goes on.
Yes.
When I say on and on, like not as in it drones on in a boring way. It is, gunfights, explosions all the way down the side of this mountain. But each little mini set piece within the bigger kind of context is unique and different from another. You look at 80s cinema and people say, 80s was the decade of the action movie.
Yeah.
The Stallone films, the Lundgren films, the Schwarzenegger films. They all owe one hell of a debt to Where Eagles Dare.
Oh my God, yes. Absolutely they do. This film, when I watched it the first time in college, and I thought it was largely going to be over when the cable car blew up. I thought, oh, he's killed the last two guys. Now it's just, fade to them having escaped, and they're back in England, and they're kicking back, and, they're saying, good show, whatever. Like I because that's how some 60s war films, they kind of get through the business, and then they kind of just dissolve to the final sequence right before the end. This film was like, no, there's this bus with a snowplow on the front, and remember all that dynamite that we planted earlier? Well, remember what Hitchcock said: if you rig a bomb earlier in the film, you got to promise the audience, you're telling the audience it's going to blow up later. And holy crap, it's like, no, there's a bus, and there's explosions with these telegraph poles and trees. Then we blow up an entire bridge. Numerous German vehicles go careening. No digital effects back then. Real German horses just go flying off into ravines.
I think the director, hated Volkswagen.
Yeah.
And then they get to an airfield, and they just start driving into planes.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was going, what kind of budget did they have for this film?
This was back when you could make a movie. Like, this was,
this
ain't, hey, we've got this fancy dancy green screen dome put on this Boba Fett helmet and we're going to make a whole series in this hangar. No, this is like, we're going to go out into the Black Forest and we're going to blow up some stuff. And, you know, we're going to build a bridge, blow it up. We're going to get this bus. It's going to be killer. Like, it's going to be great. Oh, and by the way, we've gotten all these airplanes. We're going to run them over with this bus. It's going to be
There's a few people in the chat here who really liked the expression you used a moment ago after you played your clip, saying a fraction of the action.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm starting to think that could be a great tagline for war stories. War stories. Fraction of the action.
See, I love the fact that Tony has the ability to find, he has the ability to strike the well, where I just kind of I walk by and I'm not literally saying the word well, but I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And you're like, dude, that's a well. And I'm like, oh, it is a well. Cool. Yeah, I don't know how I'd get.
I think I shared this with you in private message yesterday, but for those people in the chat, I'm really hoping that you get to see the first episode of Desert Rat Reacts, hopefully by the end of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I am so proud of the tagline I've come up with. You'll enjoy it. I don't want to be too cryptic. So
no. Multiple German vehicles also blow up trying to stop this bus, as the same Junkers from the beginning of the film, which is flown by a very well uniformed RAF pilot. He's got the great goggles with the Irvin jacket and everything on. You see him,
a wonderful accent.
Oh God, you see him in the beginning, you see him in the end. He lands the plane. They're still firing their MP40s, which the details in this movie are impeccable. Heidi brings onto the bus 2 huge duffel bags of magazines. That's why they're able to keep firing and firing and firing. There's none of this, where do the mystery bullets come from? Like, it's not like modern films where you go, the guy literally has nowhere to keep all that ammo, and yet somehow he never runs out. No, they have the duffel bags full of stuff. You know, it's very well done. And you actually see Heidi helping them reload in the bus at times. She's like back there, not cowering, but her job is to help reload. Like, she's handing Eastwood and Mary Uri more ammunition, loaded Schmeisers. So I'm
making a bit of an assumption here when I say it, but because I haven't read the book, but I have read other Alistair MacLean novels.
Mm-hmm.
It's also testament, I think, to his writing, because that he was a guy who would not consider something like that and would have written it. But for all I know, there isn't even a snowplow bus in the Alistair MacLean novel.
Right. I've always wanted to read the book. I just haven't gotten around to it. You know, time making fools of us all. The final scene, they're on the plane. They're headed back to England, and the colonel has made the personal journey on the plane to pick them up. The guy who gave them the mission and described everything to them. He's there. Burton is sitting across from him in the jump seats, the jump benches. And we have this little moment here.
Early tonight, I showed it to Colonel Kramer. He agreed with me that this was the top German agent in Britain. It's your name, Colonel.
Now you're guessing, Smith.
No guesswork, Colonel. Your pointing that gun at me is sufficient evidence.
That is, to me, one of the most brilliant little turnarounds. It's like, this mission, you think it's over with the 3 guys. You know, he's rooted out, he's ferreted out those guys. He's also got the names of every single counter person in, you know, England, German embedded spy.
Yep.
And as part of that, he's seen that they wrote down the colonel's name. And now it only stands to reason why the colonel showed up personally on the plane, to try and figure out a way to either figure out what they know and or eliminate all of them before they get back, so that he doesn't lose, his position or whatever, or survive, really, I guess.
It's that there are so many twists, turns, behind the curtain, rug pulls, whatever, all the different phrases you want to use. And I was very much when the movie went from suspense thriller to full-blown action movie, I didn't think the closing scene was going to go back to suspense thriller again.
Right.
I was not really not expecting that. And a classic, which again, even the never mind the influence this film has clearly had on the action movie genre of Star Wars and all these things we've already mentioned. That whole twist and turn kind of plot style narrative structure has been applied in cinema with a lot of influence from this, but in completely different genres. I'm trying to think of a movie in my. I mean, can you imagine M. Night Shyamalan not liking this film?
Right. It's like if he didn't like this film, then his whole attempt at a career, it would be a sham. And this does it so much better than because this isn't a twist for the sake of a twist so much. It's more of a this is how deep the threads go in these kinds of organizations. This is the way you have to think and what you have to do. George,
I mean, using some of the 1960s lingo, the kids of the day would have said this was happening. It wasn't Shyamalan's The Happening.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, dude, the trees. It's Apollo. That's why people are laying on the ground and letting the lawnmowers roll over their heads. George, yeah, I mean, I've got the Zapruder film here we can study it just to make sure, but yeah. Yep. Your statement's accurate. It's very accurate. Anyway, moving on. The final bit of business here is the Colonel is given an ultimatum. He's given a choice. You can go back and be hanged, or firing squad or whatever it is, or we can save ourselves a lot of paperwork. It's like, wow. And this embedded ardent Nazi decides to just jump out of the plane without a parachute. And they close the door and they kind of sit down, and it's everybody just looking kind of, run down, ragged. And we have this little exchange here between Eastwood and Burton.
Do me a favor, will you? Next time you have one of these things, keep it an all-British operation.
I'll try, Lieutenant.
And they just lean back and try and get some rest as the plane flies back to England. It is, and then the music starts up again. That beautiful score that we mentioned earlier.
That score, and it doesn't cut to black screen credits.
Right,
the credits start rolling, and the way the movie opened, you have that striking camouflage design on the plane. Flying through the snowy mountains.
Yeah. It's we talked at the beginning of the film about how they don't make Hollywood actors like this anymore. They don't have movie stars like this anymore. They don't have films like this anymore. Part of me cynically says, yeah, well, we can't have films like this anymore because mountains don't have snow on them anymore. But aside from that, I think another reason that we don't seem to be able to have films like this anymore is I think we need to get into this. We will be getting into this discussion naturally as War Stories goes along, Tony, but we've touched on it a little bit, which is filmmakers now, they do one of two things. They either believe that a movie about a war has to be, hyper brutal, hyper stylized, and hyper they're trying to make some kind of statement, like the movie Fury, or something where everybody in a war is a jerk, and everybody in a war is a sadistic bastard, and everybody in a war is trying to rip the intestines literally out of somebody else, and that it's all grisly and all this kind of stuff. And war's horrible, don't get me wrong, in a historical context, but they think that a war film either has to be rooted in some kind of actual historical event, and we're going to overclock the grisliness of it to the point that it almost becomes a night terror for anybody watching it, where you just can't get through it.
Yeah.
Or it's okay to do a World War II film if you make it a zombie movie. Which I'm like, what happened to just being able to make a World War II film that was using it as the backdrop for a really, really well-written action film? And when I say that, I don't mean like Kelly's Heroes, where they practically go AWOL in order to have the story. It's like, we want to have a bank robbery, but in the middle of World War II in Italy or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, I don't mean it like that. I mean, when I say World War II as a backdrop, I mean, the characters are in the war. They're fighting the war. It's just something that didn't quite happen, like Sahara, or like this, or like what? Yeah. Why can't we make those anymore?
Well, I think we live in an age where, how many times have you read a movie review from a critic, and the critic has said something along the lines of, you know, the real message of the film is, and it's like the movie has to be an allegory for something else,
right?
You know, it's like this movie is about, you know, at its core, it's about racism in America and this whatever.
Yeah.
I think critics come out so often saying that it's like, you know, what is the director trying to say here? What is the movie trying to say to us? Do they ever stop and just think, it was just trying to tell a good story?
Yeah.
It didn't, you know, there's nothing in this film about, you know, okay, the creepy sex lips indicate something about that one character, but, you know, they're not making a statement about the Nazi Party,
right,
the Holocaust, none of that stuff. And I think the other thing as well with movie stars, like, and I promised you I would bring this up from our private chat. I said to you in the chat yesterday, I am jealous. I am jealous of the generation that grew up with people like Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood at this time as their movie stars.
Yeah,
because my generation is growing up with, you know, critics and YouTubers who somehow relate Top Gun 2 and make it akin to a religious experience.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is not the same kind of movie star as Richard Burton or Clint Eastwood.
No.
And I'm sorry, I don't think Leonardo DiCaprio is a good actor. He's not a movie star.
Right.
And say what you like about, you know, I know some people refrain from drink. I'm not saying you have to be a drinker. What I'm kind of getting to with this, I mentioned that I would have really liked this film. I mean, I love it anyway, but had they cast Oliver Reed, I would have liked it even more. But you take actors like Burton, Oliver Reed, Richard Harris, English actors who said they learned a lot of their acting by getting drunk and having fights in pubs. Now,
right,
I'm not endorsing the fact, you know, that people are, you know, borderline alcoholics and they fight in pubs. But then when they go and portray these ice cold, hard men on screen, it's not some artsy fartsy actor who, you know, grew up in tights and maybe did a bit of ballet on the side and is trying to be this person.
Right.
Clint Eastwood, different again, right? Clint Eastwood can ride a horse. He's physically fit. He's strong. It's, you know, I've never really heard Clint Eastwood having any kind of a reputation for being a hard drinking actual fighter kind of, but the guy is who he is.
Right.
The movie stars of today aren't like that. Okay, yes, Tom Cruise, can run really fast and has a nice gait to his run.
And he's done a lot of his own stunts in all those Mission Impossible films. He seems to get an adrenaline rush from doing his own stunts. I don't watch his films, modern movies, I mean, so it's like I don't know, but that's what I've heard. Yeah.
But I think the difference here is Tom Cruise has done more stunts than Richard Burton ever did. But if I had if I was told there's two ways out of this German castle, you've either got to fight Tom Cruise or you got to fight Richard Burton, I'll go stomp all over Tom Cruise. I would think twice about getting into a fight with Richard Burton.
Yeah, he has a well of something down there, and it's deceptive because, like we've joked earlier, he's not.
It was the movie stars of that day, like Lee Marvin. I love Lee Marvin.
Yep.
There is not a movie star around today like Lee Marvin.
Well, because he was actually in World War II. I mean, he had the real experience.
In the Marine Corps, Purple Heart in the Pacific.
Yeah. That's, what? That's one that we should watch one day is Hell in the Pacific. That is a fascinating movie.
I've never seen it.
Oh, have you heard about it?
I know of it. Yeah. Is it with Toshiro Mifune and
Yeah, Lee Marvin, Toshiro Mifune.
Yeah, it's one of those. Before anyone passes judgment, you haven't seen that. I was like, I've seen a lot of movies in my life,
right?
But, like Michael didn't see this until college.
Yeah.
Sometimes pass you by. Let's do that for the next episode, Hell in the Pacific, because I will never say no to Lee Marvin or Toshiro Mifune.
Well, here's the caveat I want to give you is that when we watch that one, if you can, if you don't have access to it, don't make a purchase. In other words, we can choose another film while we get you the right version, because there are actually two endings to the movie. And the ending that the director fought for and lost the battle on is the better realistic ending. The studio pushed for another ending that is the stupidest thing. And there is a Blu-ray that came out that I have that provided the ability to watch it one way or the other. And so if you can't find that Blu-ray pressing, I will make sure that I get you a copy to watch that way. So just do some homework first and see if you can find it.
How does this sound as a plan then? Because 2 weeks from now is literally the weekend before I leave for the United States.
Oh, okay.
Grace, I think, only gets back from Thailand the day before.
Right.
So I was going to suggest skipping the next regular war stories. Because, I've basically got a week with Grace before I then leave, spend some time together. But also that weekend, just to plug my own channel a little bit, I'll be doing a lot of prep because on the Saturday, I'm doing a special 40th anniversary of Action Force live stream.
Nice.
With Bob Breakin and Bobby Valla, the original designer and the new designer.
Yeah.
So the next episode of War Stories will be on Analog Toys as part of Iconicon, with you, me, and Melinda, and Matt Movie 611, and we're going to talk Rambo 3.
That's right.
And then let's look at doing Hell in the Pacific when I get back from America.
That'd be great. That'll give you time to figure out if you have access to that version, because I had it on I had to buy one of those Twilight Time official limited edition Blu-rays, and I don't know availability of different versions of older films is usually a lot better outside the United States on physical media. But just tell me if you have trouble finding it, because if you do, then I'll have a copy waiting for you here so that you'll have it to take back with you.
That sounds good. I can exchange it for that Kylie Minogue documentary that I bought you the other day and didn't tell you that I bought you.
You are too kind. You are too kind, sir.
You're very welcome.
That is, I get to watch that finally. Amazing.
It was that one I shared with you the other day. And I found it here on eBay. Still in the shrink wrapper, unopened.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I because I don't have access to any of that stuff because they don't sell it over here. It's hard for me to gauge, you know, when you ask me the question, you're like, is it worth watching? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't have access to any of it. Like, I can't watch it.
Yeah.
You know? But thank you. That's very kind. Very, very kind of you. I can't wait.
My pleasure.
Now to wrap up Where Eagles Dare, Tony, I appreciate you choosing this film by pulling it out of my subconscious the last time. I hope everybody who hasn't seen this movie will be inspired to go watch it. It is one of the greatest action films and war films, even though it's fictional, that I think's ever been put in front of a lens. And for those of you who are really big fans of Where Eagles Dare, who do not have, and I do not have marketing endorsements, I have no deal with Cinema Retro. The Cinema Retro Movie Classics edition of Where Eagles Dare, any of you guys living in the UK, you're in luck because Cinema Retro is a UK publication. So it is not an American one. American publications don't talk about old movies like this anymore. Yeah. Bastards. Anyway, so yeah, get this nice, thick, lots of information.
I love magazines like that. You know, Rambo 3 came out just after we arrived in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
We came here in 1988, and while we were waiting for our stuff to come on the ship, we were living out of suitcases kind of thing. My parents said, well, let's save a little bit of money. And we spent the summer in a caravan park. And just down the road from that caravan park was the only drive-in cinema in Western Australia. And it's still there.
Right.
So not only do I get to go to the drive-in cinema for the first time in my life, I also get the pleasure of my 17-year-old brother who's just got his license and his first car.
Yeah.
He's going to take me, not my parents. So that makes it doubly cool. And what movie's on? Rambo 3.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I tell this story is that at the kiosk where my brother bought me the drinks and everything, they had a magazine like that about the production of Rambo 3. This big, glossy.
Yeah.
I wish I still had it, but I got that magazine and I took it everywhere with me for weeks and I read it front to back. That started my passion for film magazines. And for anyone out there, Empire, which is a UK publication, I think is one of the best film magazines in the world. When I lived in the UK through the 2000s, I bought every single issue. It would be, what I would read on the train. And what I particularly enjoyed is they would do big articles, not just of upcoming movies, but things like that, where you would get like an 8 or 10 page spread about the making of an old film, to celebrate maybe a 30th anniversary or something. And I love stuff like that. So
I had the same experience as a kid. I got the Willow movie magazine and I read that. I still have my copy. I read it from cover to cover numerous times. And that's what made me finally understand a lot of the work that went into making movies. And Wolfie, I have good news for you. It is a UK publication, but they ship to the US. That's how I got mine. So if you go on their website, you can get the magazine.
And Wolfie, you say the Brits have all the cool stuff. Well, I'm going to plug my home country for a moment. If Michael will indulge me and allow me to say something wonderful about Britain. I'm sure he won't mind.
I'm sorry. You know how I feel about that.
So this film came out in 68, so it still would have been popular in 70, 71. Can you imagine being a kid in 1971 and watching this and then coming home to your parents going, I want the action figures, I want the toys. And most people were like, they didn't make toys of Where Eagles Dare.
Right.
But in England, they did. It was called Power Toys Action Man.
That's right.
And you had it all.
You could do Where Eagles Dare. You could literally do Colditz. You could do all of these different amazing World War II themed movies and television shows. It it's probably, I shouldn't say probably, it is the best 12-inch scale action figure line of all time.
Yeah. Would you like to see a sequel to Where Eagles Dare? This is a bit of a trick question.
No, I get what you're saying. Before we started the stream, I was thinking about the question of, would I ever want to see this movie remade? And I don't think I do.
No, I don't want to see it remade.
Yeah. As far as a sequel goes, if Alistair McLean has written a sequel to it that hasn't ever been filmed, that's the only legit way I would want to see it. If Alistair McLean didn't write a sequel, I know that they did sequels to Rambo because they changed the writing of the book itself, First Blood. But in this case, it's been such a long time. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. What do you think?
Well, if they were going to make a sequel, I wouldn't care if it was good or bad. I'm just happy that the story continues.
You got me. You threw that in there, and I love you for it.
Well,
Brilliant.
Someone just mentioned Willow, and it.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was.
I don't care if it totally sucks. I'm just glad there's another Obi-Wan show.
I'm just glad it's continuing. That's like saying, this is very morbid, but that's like saying, I don't care if my dog is alive or dead as long as I can still drag his body around the house. Like it's like
yeah.
What? So yeah. I don't know how I would actually feel about, I definitely don't want it remade. I would be okay with, and I'm very serious about saying this. I have said for several years now that it is criminal of Hollywood that they have not cast Scarlett Johansson in a biopic of Ingrid Pitt. Because if you look at the two of their faces, like two portraits I've compared them before, she is close enough to Ingrid Pitt that if you did just some basic makeup on her, you could do a biopic of Ingrid Pitt, which would be cool to watch because they always work in scenes from various productions in those biopics. And you could do the whole Where Eagles Dare sequence of the film, and have people, and it would be, scenes during the filming of that movie in her life, which I think would be really a cool thing to see. But as far as an actual sequel, unless Alistair McLean wrote it, I wouldn't want it to get resurrected like a zombie for another go, because these filmmakers today don't know how to do this kind of filmmaking. They just don't. For World War II, I don't trust them. I just don't trust them. So, yeah. Well, everybody, we have 2 big potential videos coming out this weekend. One's definitely coming out. That's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time. We are having a live premiere of the latest Star Wars Follies, Star Wars Follies 19. It's currently on Patreon right now.
And it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. And then Sunday, we potentially get the first episode of Desert Rat Reacts on Analog Toys.
Yeah. Oh, and that will be Sunday on Patreon, and then probably Monday on YouTube if I can get it done in time. And a review of the Cobra Hydrofoil that Jody donated some time ago. That I'm hoping will be on Patreon tomorrow morning. So yeah,
good deal.
Oh, and before I forget, I will also be on the Valaverse YouTube channel in about 45 minutes. Me and Bobby are going to talk about issue 6 and 7 of the comic.
Well, you better get some breakfast and a.
I've got plenty of time, but yeah, we better wrap it up.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to hold us up this long. It's just there's a lot to talk about with this film. So
I don't feel in one way, shape, or form that I've been held up.
Okay.
I've just been enjoying myself for the last 2.5 hours with my friend. So
all right, that makes sense. That makes sense. So everybody, I'm gonna leave you with this, and then we're out. Bye, everyone. See you on the next War Stories, and we'll see you on the Star Wars Follies premiere tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.